Right, guys, the time's flicked. Hi, Marjan. Thanks for joining us. So the reason for this webinar is there's been a couple of updates. I just really wanted to give people an opportunity to ask questions around the latest government support, and also just trying to talk about what we're seeing in the marketplace at the moment. And if people want to, I'm quite happy to sort of turn on microphones and we can have some time for people to share their thoughts as well, if they think that will be useful. So there's four main things we're going to cover today. The first is what's changing about the coronavirus job retention scheme, which is the furlough stuff. The second is the self-employed income support scheme. Then I just want to talk briefly about the Bounceback Loan. And then the local authority discretionary grant fund, which is another fund for those who have offices, but perhaps haven't got other grants. So what we're going to do is we'll delve first of all into the job retention scheme. So what's changing? So so far it's been operating the same pretty much up until and it will up until the end of this month. But as of the 1st of July, it will be changing. And the biggest change is you'll be able to furlough your staff part-time or depending on what their working hours are. So you can be flexible in how you furlough them. However, the government put some pretty big stipulations in place. So for somebody to be furloughed after that date, the 1st of July, they're going to have to have already been furloughed for at least 3 weeks between or by that point, which means basically any new employees that need to be furloughed must be furloughed by the 10th of June at the latest, if that's their first time being furloughed. Obviously, if somebody's already been furloughed for over 3 weeks or if they're on furlough at the moment, then they'll be eligible post the 1st of July as well. And we'll have about end of the 30 days, end of July, to make any claims for any of those employees that have been furloughed during June as well. So just to make sure that we can get that money back as well. So the idea is that part-time furloughing is going to be allowed any amount of time and on any shift pattern. So it's going to be down to the employer to decide how that looks. You will have to furlough somebody for at least a minimum period of at least 1 week to make sure that the calculations can work out. But that's going to give people a lot of flexibility. And we're going to get more details about the full calculation process and everything like that from around the 12th of June. But we've got a pretty good idea already of what's going on. So I've created this little, or this table with kind of a breakdown of what's going on. I'm going to move my mouse onto the screen so we can see and I can use that as a guide. So each of these is the months of the year, obviously, and what's happening is in different months, certain things are changing. So in June, we're still on the current scheme, which is so to be furloughed, you have to be furloughed your full time and for 3 weeks minimum. You have to pay, the employer has to pay at least 80% of those wages, and the government will pay all of those that 80%. That's a maximum of £2,500, which basically means as an employer, you don't have to contribute anything, although some are topping up the 20%. And the government are also paying all the tax and national insurance for those employees as well, on top of that. In July, it's going to be the same again, although they're going to allow the part-time rules. In August, it's going to be part-time, but this time the employer will have to cover for the tax and national insurance. And as you can see, what's going to happen overall is then the amount of contributions the government will give is slowly going to deteriorate down to the 60% in October, with the employer making up the difference so that the employee is still getting at least 80% of their original wage in total. Now, obviously, it's going to get a bit complex as people start maybe furloughing some employees on a part-time basis. That's where, obviously, as customers of ours, we're going to be helping making those calculations for you. But it's just to give you a bird's eye view of what's going on and what you can and can't do. But obviously, the costs are going to be coming in more and more for the employer throughout that period. And we don't know if it's going to continue after November. But what we do know is it's costing the government a hell of a lot of money at the moment. So we're telling people to basically expect that it won't continue and bank all of your kind of thought processes on that and work towards that. And if it does continue, then that's a bonus. Just in the chat, just pop in there. Does that all make sense? If it does, just pop in the chat and just say, yeah, all good. Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Matt. Excellent. Okay. So that's basically what we know about furlough so far. Now, obviously, there are really big changes. It is going to change how businesses work. And there are going to be some challenges with, for example, people that have realised that they can't actually keep their employees on, and whether those employees might get laid off. So the hope the government have got here is by easing it, that won't happen. But we do expect that will really open up that job market, and there'll be a lot of people that are going to start to be laid off, as we've already seen some big employers start to just basically not carry on through the furlough process and just close down certain divisions. So one of the things we've just got asked is, can we explain the 10th of June? So basically what I was saying before around that 10th of June date. So what that basically means is, if on the 10th of June, somebody has not yet been furloughed, okay, then you must furlough them on the 10th of June for 3 weeks if you want to furlough them after that period. Anybody that has been furloughed during March, April, May, or currently on furlough, they can be furloughed after the end of June. What you couldn't do is, if you're currently at full capacity with an employee, they're currently working, and then you just suddenly decide that you want to furlough them after the end of June, you can't do that if they haven't already been furloughed, basically. I hope that makes sense. Is that okay, Lisa? Does that make sense? Fab. So what we'll do is we'll just jump into the next scheme, which is the self-employed income support scheme. So remember, this is one for self-employed people that have a self-employed income, sole trader or partnership. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the actual scheme itself, because it's basically the scheme hasn't changed. I just want to point out a couple of things for it. So first of all, is a third of the people that were eligible for this scheme have not applied yet, which I think is astronomical. It's a massive number. And I from our own sort of business experience on the landscape, I expect that there's some people that didn't even know that they were able to claim. Actually, just very quickly flicking back, what we've also found is 40% of the businesses that have claimed furlough at the moment for their staff have not claimed for the employer's tax and national insurance, which again I think is massive. Now, some of those won't need that money, so they're just they're claiming what they need. But I think most people have probably just made mistakes and not actually been able to didn't know basically that they were eligible to do it, which I think is quite eye-opening into what people have availability of information basically. So a third of people have not applied for the first self-employed income support scheme grant. Now, what they're going to do is they are going to open up a new one, but they're still keeping the existing grant scheme open. So you can still get the £7,500 grant that's available, and you can apply for it up until the 13th of July this year. And applications for the second grant are going to open in and around August time, where self-employed people can get 70% of their average monthly trading profits, up to a maximum of £6,570. And all the eligibility criteria is the same. So basically, if somebody's already gone through this, got the first grant, they're going to be able to get the second grant as well. Are there any questions on that one? Or we all okay? If everything's okay, just say all good. Excellent. Thank you very much, guys. Chris, I know of someone who has claimed this, but is the sole director of a limited company. I told her she's not eligible. The site has let her claim and not checked anything. This is wholly wrong in my eyes. Am I correct that I can't claim, as I keep getting emails from H1C to claim? So you can't claim unless you've gone through, you are a sole trader. So from everything that H1C have said so far, directors of companies can't claim. But that'll be very interesting, Christo. Forward it along to me. It'd be interesting to see why they're coming up with that, and maybe a phone call to HMRC to figure out why they're why you're getting email. Basically, that'll be really interesting. Okay, so the next thing is the Bounceback Loan. Now, this is probably the easiest access to cash I have ever seen. It is it's incredible, really. So the Bounceback Loan is loans between £2,000 to £50,000, up to a maximum of 25% of your turnover based on your 2019 calendar year. So obviously, if you're over 200,000, it makes no, you're not going to get more than 50,000. So what happens is the first 12 months of that loan is interest free, and then it's only 2.5% thereafter, and generally they're 6-year loans. So I mean, to me, it's just it's crazy. Now, obviously, your business must have been adversely affected by COVID-19 to get the loan, and it is a loan, so you do have to pay it back, and that's really important to stress. But as far as access to cash to regenerate and bounce back, it really is what it says on the tin. And CBILS came out, and we weren't massively overawed by the effect of that, because not many people seem to get it, but we're seeing almost every single application go through for the Bounceback Loan at the moment. In fact, we haven't seen so far ourselves one that hasn't gone through, although we have heard of some. If you've already applied for the CBILS loan, you can't do the Bounceback Loan. But what we've also seen is some banks transferring people that have applied for a CBILS loan into a Bounceback Loan because the interest rate is so much cheaper. So where it takes it from, it might even be as high as 8 to 10%. And it's flicking it to 2.5%. So if you have got a CBILS loan, it's probably worth double checking and seeing if your bank will switch it across. And your business for the Bounceback Loan has to have been established by March the 1st, 2020, which actually really gives quite a bit of scope for this, as long as obviously there is a turnover in the business, in that business, which is the key part. So that's the Bounceback Loan. It was just to give people a bit of an idea around it. Chris has mentioned there that she's got hers in 24 hours, and it was in her bank within 24 hours. Fantastic. That's really good, isn't it? So it's also really quick access to funds. So definitely worth pointing out, although I know a lot of people have already gone through the process. And finally, on these grants and funding side of things, they've just introduced what's called the Local Authority Discretionary Grant Fund. So what we had before, we've had a couple of grants, which is a small business grant and the retail, hospitality and leisure grant. And both of these have been targeted at businesses that have properties. Now, some of those businesses that have properties are the ratepayer, which means they're on the bill basically with their local council. But not everybody is on that bill. Sometimes people are in shared office spaces, so they still pay rent or have fixed costs to for internet or whatever it is within their office, but they're not eligible for the original grant. So what the government have done is they've brought in the Local Authority Discretionary Grant Fund, and they're grants of either 25,000, 10,000, or any amount under £10,000. So there's quite a range depending on the size of business and the sector they're in. It's only eligible for businesses in England, and you are ineligible. You basically can't get it if you have already got either of the original grants. But it can be quite a good way of getting a grant, and that's only just open. So we're starting to see people apply for that basically with their local council. Some councils have not got things set up yet, so we know that something's we've got to be paying attention to what your council website is doing, what access they're providing. Question we've got: can you claim this one for a home office? No, so it's fixed. It's mainly fixed office costs. The only thing we haven't worked out yet is whether, because it's discretionary from the council, whether there is, obviously you can't claim it for things like use of home as office, but whether or not you might be able to claim it if you have, for example, a second internet line in. Our current reading of everything is that it's a no, but as it's a discretionary fund, I think some councils might operate this different to others, but it's probably unlikely. Any questions around either the Bounceback Loan or the discretionary fund? Excellent. Okay. So the final bit I want to talk about is just some real general thoughts about what's going on at the moment. So first of all is, we've been talking with lots of clients over the last couple of months, and it's been really inspiring. It's been really interesting, and it's been really useful to see the stories from people. Just flicking back a second, a question has come through. Yes, that grant, the discretionary grant, is run by the local council, so they're going to administer it. So you have to go onto your local council website. So we've got these stories that are coming out, and I've found in my own business they've been really useful at, sometimes it's very direct stuff, and sometimes it's just giving me a lay of the land of what's going on, and just being able to see how different industries are responding, and that's helping me make decisions within my business. So on the back of that, I felt that it would be nice just to get those conversations out into the open, and our customers to experience those conversations. So we've set up a webinar called In Conversation With, which we're going to run on a weekly basis. It won't be every single week. Sometimes we'll have like legislation updates or other things, but we're going to, from here on in, until nobody listens or watches it, we're going to here on in run weekly webinars. And the first one we did last week with Karen and Nigel from Harvard Business Solutions, who talked about how they travel around the world for, travel around the UK and Europe for over 3 years, running their business remotely. And that's been quite interesting to see how that compares to, life during COVID-19 and the flexibility and agility required. So there's a YouTube link there for that, and I can drop that in the chat if people want it, or put it on the comments to this as well. And the second thing is, just on the back of these stories, one of the things that we've noticed is right now, perception of people's businesses is going to be everything. Because so attention was the important thing at the beginning, and now perception, because any business that is, so we're fortunate enough, I've made a decision that our business is not going to go back to, our business is going to stay remote for at least the next 3 months, likely to be a lot longer than that, because our customer service level is not being affected by us being online. But obviously, anyone who has a retail premises, or some people that deliver face-to-face normally, in anything, so for example, children's activity classes, those sorts of things, if you meet face-to-face, maybe for recruitment, although you can go online still, all these types of things, is that PR aspect of businesses is going to become absolutely vital. So I suppose what I'm looking at is encouraging clients to start setting up a bit of a PR plan of, what does it look like when somebody looks at your business? Are you taking the precautions for example, infection control in your office if you're going back to work and having meetings? What's the perception of your clients that you're doing things safely? Now, I know this isn't everybody's perception, because I have spoken to people who are already this week doing meetings, and they're not worrying too much about a 2-meter distance or anything like that, which it isn't great, but that's people's perceptions of stuff. But I think on the whole, most people have a nervousness. So it's going to be important for us to be setting that PR plan about how we go back to, whether we are going to meet face-to-face with our customers or continue to Zooms, whether we're going to, allow people into retail spaces, etc., in line with obviously government guidelines, or whether we're going to be delivering, activities outside, like is starting to happen now. So all of this is happening, and we need to set up PR plan. But also, I think that it's linked with quite a lot of stuff, including some stuff online. And on the 2nd of June, the Google made some changes. One of our customers informed me about this, a customer called Trustist, who run a review platform that basically helps aggregate reviews and helps people rank on Google better for SEO. But what it allows basically is you to have your home page can be, when people search for it on Google, can have stars next to it, which is better for SEO. So if people are searching for stuff, for example, for us, Newcastle accountant or accountant Newcastle, it's more likely for them to basically see our stuff. So as we're coming out of this, I just figured any useful hints and tips around that, and it makes you look good if you got a star rating. And I thought maybe those reviews that you get could be about, rather than just getting standard reviews of, great customer service, it's about how confident the customer feels with the measures you're taking. So for example, a customer saying, yeah, it feels really safe to be in this, this environment, whether it's, activities outside, whether it's in somebody's office space, whether it's in a retail unit, whatever it is. So that seems like it could be a good tool. So I've added a link to that there, and I'll also send that around when I send the recording around to people as well a little later. Just in the chat, just let me know if all that, my waffling there, is making sense and is useful for people. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, excellent. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just talk about something else, which is not really Stride. It's slightly different. So it's what is my hat as running the Stride business. I'm also on the executive board for a community company called the Children's Activities Association. And as part of the children's activities sector, which a good proportion of our clients are, the children's activities sector is about, you get Ofsted for schools and for carers, for childcare and for nurseries, but school provision outside of that is not currently Ofsteded. So parents obviously are going to want to know at the moment whether it's safe to put their kids back in school so they can work, particularly in that balance, if you've got that balancing act between kids and running a business. So we've created a survey as part of that. We represent about 2.5 million kids' activities. So what we're trying to do is get the perception of parents in our own efforts at trying to figure out when to recommend to the industry they should go back based on parents' perceptions, and how to communicate to those parents about going back. So this is our own, as I said, as part of the Children's Activities Association way of doing that. So what I'd do is I'd love for people to share that link out, and if you are a parent, to fill that in as well, please. That would be great to get your opinions. And finally, as I said, I'll drop all these links on an email. Finally is just feedback. As part of what I mentioned earlier about getting Google stars, we want to drive our own SEO on Google. So please feel free to, if you've got an up-to-date phone, you can just take a photo of that and it'll pull the QR code and take you to our referral page. And if you can just drop in a testimonial if you have had a good service from us and you'd like to talk about it, that would be great. Other than that, are there any other questions or thoughts people would like to add about their own experiences at the moment, or what might be useful for other people? If there's not, then just say no, all good. Yeah, Bounceback Loans are very good. Yeah, very good. Fantastic, Kristen, Marjan. Thanks, guys. Okay, what we'll do then is we'll close it off there. Thank you so much for your time. As I said, I'll send a recording round and a link to the future recordings as well, so you've got that. And please, if you have any other questions, please do contact myself or the rest of the Strike team. Thanks, guys. Stay safe and have a good one.